Our next presenter is Katie DeLude. She's the head athletic trainer at Northeastern University. Go Huskies. She started there in 2014 and has since helped grow the department's sports medicine performance collaborative model. Her primary team coverage is women's ice hockey and women's rowing. She's responsible for the annual Northeastern Sports Performance Summit, focusing in matters of physical, medical, and well-being of athletes. She was recently published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research for the article on the relationship between the physiological off-ice testing, on-ice skating, and game performance in Division I female ice hockey players. Prior to Northeastern, Katie was a graduate assistant at Texas State University, earning her master's degree in advanced post-professional athletic training in 2014. She completed her graduate work with a split position of coordinator of care for men's and women's track and field and a lab instructor for various classes. As a newly certified athletic trainer, she worked as an intern for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. Katie received her bachelor's degree in athletic training from Springfield College in 2011. Here's Katie.
So another Springfield track person, that's awesome. I have to unmute this.
No, you're good.
Awesome. All right. So first, thank you everyone for the Precision AT staff. This is a terrific opportunity to bring everyone together for Collaborative Minds. Everything you guys do as a group helps promote the profession and brings much needed healthcare to active communities, which everyone deserves. I think we can all agree on that. So this was originally my thesis. And if you've ever done a thesis, you don't want to pick it up at any moment after you're done, right? I see some heads, right? It is like, it's the worst thing in the world when you finally complete, you turn it in, you're done, you never want to come back. And Megan reached out to me and I said, yes, I'm gonna do this. I was once told, if somebody ever gives you an opportunity, say yes. So I just blindly said yes and was full of regret after. All right, so, but I do actually believe in what I was researching. So who here has ever been an athlete of any capacity? Just low poll, right? Awesome, right? Who here has used mental imagery to complete a task, go through motions to something, right? I'm sure most of you at some point have done it. And we're gonna kind of talk about why that works today, right? So sometimes you might be doing a free throw, right? All right, I really got this, all right? Imagery, right? Swish every single time. All right, maybe it's you're working on gaining back your quad strength after an ACL tear, right? Maybe it's gaining range of motion after you've been immobilized for a while, but maybe it's walking again after surgery, right? Or maybe you're attempting to fix your golf swing, which I promise you this won't help, right? So I'm going to talk to you about how this is beneficial. Right. I have no conflicts of interest. Nobody has ever wanted to pay me to do anything with this. So today's learning objectives. All right, we're gonna talk through those. We're gonna go through some definitions. I'm gonna have you close your eyes and you're either gonna fall asleep or in my head, you're just gonna be really devoted to the cause, all right? You're gonna be awesome motor imagers. All right, we're gonna talk about the neurological benefits, what I've found through my research, other people's research, how it improves proprioception, injury prevention, rehabilitation, task performance, and how to build a program. And then kind of, there's a lot of questions, right? You can't really tell what's going on in somebody's mind all the time. So we have some imaging. There are techniques to get in there and find out what's being fired in the brain. But as a functional component, it's quite difficult. So we're going to talk about the needs of where this can go after. All right, so hopefully you can do all these 4 things when you're done. All right, I want you to be able to define kinesthetic imagery and visual imagery, explain the purpose of each type of motor imagery, choose an appropriate motor imagery technique for a specific task, and then explain the functional equivalence of the neurological benefits. So first, you need to know what these are. So motor imagery is simple. It's an efferent task stimulated within the nervous system without a physical output. All right, I'm mentally preparing myself, but I'm not actually performing. All right, pretty simple. So kinesthetic is that first person perspective, right? It's how you perceive it in your own body. This is the sensation, the feeling that you might get when performing this. Again, without actually doing anything. Visual imagery, so it can be broken down into first and third person and then internal and external. So we have, this is when somebody imagines his or herself performing a task or a third party performing a task from an outside perspective or internal. So my internal perspective would be, all right, I'm gonna take my left foot and kick it out, right? Now that is my vision here. I close my eyes, I'm picturing my left foot coming out. Or I could have somebody else stand, kick their leg out, and that's how I'm gonna perceive it. Maybe it's a video or something like that, or in person. All right, I'm really hoping this will work. Yes. So everything you need to know about motor imagery comes from Cool Runnings. All right, I will stand firmly on that. So in this little 30-second clip, I'm gonna have you tell me what they're using as a motor imagery technique. And I'm gonna tell you how awesome it is. All right, I don't know. I'll see if the sound works. Give me a sec. Can you hear that at all? Yeah. All right.
Race, you in here? Hey, coach. Oh, there you are. How you feeling?
All right.
Good, good. You all set to follow in your father's footsteps?
Think so.
You think so?
All right. I know so.
That's more like it. We're gonna go grab a bite to eat. You wanna join us? I didn't think so. I'll
All right,
pick you
that's all
something
we
up.
You don't have to go over the top of the
Coach.
list. Thank you. Okay, so you saw him sitting in there, right? What type of imagery was he using? Right, he's good. I saw mouth. He's using visual imagery, right? He's going through the turns, right? So he's imagining those turns from a first person, right? He's seeing himself do it. Then he's also, for the cinematic adventure, Hollywood-esque type, he's actually moving a little bit, but that's just so we know that he's using kinesthetic as well. Right. So if anyone else watching this is like, Darice, one of the greatest athletes of all time, I'm sitting here going, hey, that's motor imagery. Let's go, people. So everything you need to know, Cool Runnings. No. All right, so now you're gonna try it yourself. So, all right, I want you to look down at your right arm. You're gonna keep it completely extended. All right, and you're gonna just watch yourself do 5 bicep curls, full extension to full flexion. Count it out. Okay, so you've watched yourself do it. Now, turn to your neighbor, watch your neighbor do it 5 times. Yeah. Get that full extension, feel that elbow lock out, feel those beach muscles firing as we come back in. All right. Now, acknowledge that sensation. So you have all now performed a task. So is everyone familiar with that task? For the benefits of this lecture, I'm going to say yes. All right. Now I'm going to have you just close your eyes. Again, this is where we're going to find out if you're devoted to the cause or if you're sleepy. All right, but right, devoted to the cause. So you're going to close your eyes and go through the bicep curls that you did yourself. You watched yourself do it. Okay. We don't need to move. We're just imagining. Pump that out. All right. It would be nice if you had, imagine some weight in there. Yeah, getting swole. All right. Now imagine your neighbor doing it 5 times. Okay. We're going to do this, should go in about the same time that it would take to actually perform the task. Okay. Time is relevant in this. Now, all right, you can open your eyes for a second. Now we're going to use a kinesthetic approach. All right. So close your eyes again. I'm going to talk you through that bicep curl. All right. You're going to feel the sensation of your hand down at your thigh. You're going to feel your elbow locked out. Now, you're going to feel your abs engage as you initiate that first impulse of pull to bring your hand up towards your shoulder, right? As you get through, you hit mid-range, it starts to become a little bit easier. You start to feel more of that contractibility within that bicep. As it gets a little bit easier and you start to feel that full contraction, that full force of your bicep as you hit end range at that finish. That is an example of a kinesthetic imagery. And then that combined is exactly what Darius was doing in Cool Runnings, right? He's going through both and he's feeling it at the same time. So maybe you're watching somebody do it and you're feeling it at the same time. So that actually has the greatest impact, is using a combined approach. But it has to be something you're familiar with, right? You can't just tell somebody to go do a gymnastics routine if they've never done it, right? They're never gonna acknowledge it. All right, why bother with this? So, okay, why are we gonna bother with this? Is because you wanna train your brain, right? We wanna train our nervous system, and we wanna have a neural map of our situations. Right, so we want to have that neurological sensation, neurological activation without that motor outcome. Sometimes you may have a very weak impulse and you're working with people with, some people may have degenerative diseases, and this is beneficial in keeping that brain intact and keeping the corticospinal tract intact. We're going to get more into that. So you want to practice the motor pattern, practice with the motor imagery. It helps the anticipatory response, right? All of this is just prepping yourself. It's prepping the neurological component. All right, now is when we're going to get super tricky. All right, so functional equivalence, it has a million references here because it's that important, right? So although the neural pathway of motor imagery and physical movement are different, they overlap and are trainable. So if you can train one aspect of a physical movement, then you're going to help train the physical movement. Functional equivalence should parallel the corticomotor pattern, right? So you aren't going to have as strong as a neurological impulse because you don't have the combination of that actual output. So when you're actually performing the movement, there are other parts of the brain that send a stronger signal up and down that efferent pathway. So you have to acknowledge that you're going to have like a dull light going on, but it's not going to be the full thing. Right? We're not going to break records and make huge strength gains using this, but it is beneficial in teaching, learning, and not losing a pattern. Then we have the forward model. So forward model predicts the sensory output through the familiarity of a movement. So this works best with kinesthetic imagery, right? If you know a movement, then you can sense the movement. If you don't know a movement, right? If any of us, we're not gymnasts, I do not know what it's like to do a backflip and land, right? It's just not something I can internalize. I can predict, because we're all awesome people here, what muscles I have to engage, but I still can't picture myself upside down. So here, the most important tract, the spinal tract, is the corticospinal tract. So this controls our movement. It's a white matter efferent pathway. It starts in the cerebral cortex, crosses the pyramids of the medulla, and then terminates down at the lower motor neurons of the skeletal muscle. Right. So this is our highway. That's basically it. This is the highway of movement. Now, before you get on the highway, you got to take a lot of back roads to get there. Right? So the brain is our back roads. We need to fire, not need, but most of the time, all the studies will show we're firing that primary motor cortex. So the primary motor cortex generates the neural impulse that controls the execution of movement, right? This is a big driver. Okay. I have all of them are listed here. All right, the premotor cortex, right? It prepares the body for movement, right? So we have one, it's generating the neural impulse. That's our home run hitter right there. And it controls the execution. Now we need to prepare for movement. Then the posterior parietal is the planned movement and spatial awareness. Knowing where you are in space is pretty important. Okay, it helps you, helps improve the sensation, helps improve that visual makeup. And then we have the supplementary motor cortex. So this contributes to the control of the movement. All right. So all of these, when all the research is being done through different imaging techniques, then all of these are actually firing and they're mapping these throughout the brain, right? It is kind of wild that it's like there is zero physical, but that prep pattern is gung-ho. So this is how we're going to measure it. So we have a functional MRI, which with that one, it uses, measures the blood flow in the activated areas. So when you activate an area of your brain, blood gets sent there and it says, hey, I'm working. One problem with this is you're in an MRI. So when we talk about future research, you're going to see why these are so challenging when I'm talking about functional postural balance, right? That's running, that's walking, that's being an active human being. And when you're in an MRI laying down, it's very tricky to measure a jump pattern. So we'll see where that goes. All right, so then there's the transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS. What that does is it's like this weird little kind of like helmet type of thing where they fire it, say like right here, they're targeting a certain area, and it measures the brain activation and the skeletal muscle. And from that, then you will get the motor evoked potential. So you're measuring the potential of the motor neuron. Force plates are the way that we can measure this functional progress. So force plates, who has a force plate in their clinic? Okay, yeah. So there's not many. And if you have a force plate, it's like this big. Okay, so force plates have come a long way in the past 6 years. When I started doing all this research, we had one. It was craziest thing. It was like only 5 in the U.S. and the thing was about as big as that table. So how am I supposed to measure a running, walking gait and stuff like that? And that's all I have. Okay, and you'll see it later on in this. But force plates are how you're going to measure it. The sophistication of them has really skyrocketed, but the problem is they're making them smaller instead of bigger. So they're making all these like travel ones, and it's like NBA has them, right? It's like, hey, we're going to measure our guys, measure their autonomic response, or whatever it may be, right? They're measuring their preparation for activity. But we need to make them bigger. So I think like Nebraska has one in their basketball court, but then you're in not their basketball court, in a practice facility. But then you're measuring way too much data. So how would we use this to get the best output we want and to get that functional equivalence? All right, and then Hoffman's reflex, so H reflex, that it really doesn't go up to the brain, so it just hits that dorsal root and then pops back out. So you're getting a reaction. It's not necessarily the best way to measure, but there are studies that do measure H reflex. Okay, functional posture balance. So it's a combination of your visual, vestibular, and somatosensory, right? Maintain postural stability. That is balance. I am fighting gravity. Right? Functional balance is the ability to maintain postural stability during motor movements. Right? If we can improve balance, then we can improve movement ability. We can improve movement ability. We can improve performance. If we can improve movement ability, theoretically, we can improve non-contact injury, right? So we can decrease those rates. Right? So if I think, hey, what I'm saying is pretty important, but I get it, you might just be falling asleep. But there is functional equivalence, there is importance when we're talking about postural functional balance and training the brain. All right, so this is Bennett. So Bennett is one of the greatest guys I've ever met. So he was a grad student with me, good friend of mine, grew up in Baton Rouge. Now, Bennett is what we call not good at field sports, right? He is a tennis player, golfs, right? If something else is happening around him, no bueno. But Bennett is one of the best people I've ever met. He will give you a shirt off his back. He fosters dogs. Plus, he's a volunteer soccer coach. He is terrible at field sports. So Bennett is one of the greatest people I've ever met. So I had the opportunity to work with him he was generous enough to help me with this study. So what Bennett's going to do is do a tandem walk, right? So this is a visual output. Let's see, this should work. So here's how we measure. The force plates are one on each side, so you have them together. Right, and there's one saying, ding saying go, force plate does a measuring, ding saying end, you're measuring postural sway, you're measuring speed, you're measuring static stability at the beginning and the end. Okay. Now here's another one, ready? We're getting wild with these movements. Oh, no, maybe we're not. Here's a much more athletic one. Cutting ability, unlike anyone. All right, so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about measuring the actual function. This is what we have available, and it's getting better, I promise. So that is a visual, right, external view. So when I want you to do a kinesthetic view, right, this is what I'm going to say. Feel your feet standing. Feel yourself standing on your left foot. Feel your right leg swing forward, right? Through and plant on the line in front of you, right? We have a sensation of movement. We have the sensation of stepping. All right, acknowledge your hips as you maintain your center of gravity. All comes back to the goal of this, all right? Feel the transfer from your left foot as your weight onto the ball of your right foot. You come forward, right? Feel your hips contract to maintain a steady walking balance. Feel your core contract, stay centered. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel the muscles in your ankles contracting to stay steady as you continue to walk with one foot in front of the other. Right? This process, feel this process during a controlled and consistent speed. Right? It's just giving them every sensation without going too much in depth. Right? So when you're building a program, it can't be too lengthy, it can't be too short, and you have to hit all the parts that you want them to focus on that relate back to balance. I should say functional balance. So when I had him step and turn to the right, feel the plate underneath you, right? You're standing in the back edge of the board, put him in a scenario. All right, feel step forward with your right leg, your center of gravity, stay steady. So we're not swaying too much, right? Because I want improved postural sway. All right, as you, all right, your left foot toes off as you're walking. Your left foot steadily plants on the force plate at a consistent and controlled speed and pressure. On your left foot, you shift your weight, you shift your center of gravity. Feel your core, hips, ankles, feet support your body. Feel the ball of your right foot planted on the force plate as you initiate your turn. Right. Feel your left foot push down and pivot as the body turns to the right. Feel your body turn to the right as your center of gravity stays steady. Once you've turned 180 degrees, feel your center of gravity shift forward and you're onto your right foot, and you feel your left foot toe off, hip flexors drive forward, right? Feel your left legs step onto the force plate, right? So this is probably a little bit long. It's longer than the actual scenario, but that's the problem with kinesthetic imagery, right? Problem, not really, but it's one aspect of kinesthetic imagery is you can go too far, and now we are way past the length of the actual task. So in my results from this, my walking, like tandem speed, I measured speed, step width, right? How far off the line are there, sway, turn time, and then sway, right? Tandem walking, the time improved dramatically, and then postural sway improved in both. So that showed me, my results were like, we had statistical significance. Now, how does all this help with proprioception? So with proprioception, all right, we aid in neuromuscular control, we assess and increase our body awareness, and then we improve the biomechanics of which are the fundamentals of sport. So all sport goes back to is proprioception. How do you sense where you are in space, right? How do we use control of our neuromuscular system to aid in preparation and focus while other tasks are going on around us. All right, how do we improve injury prevention and rehab? So we want to do this by, we want to improve the efficacy, so their confidence, absolutely no risk, right? This has absolutely no risk. Unless you're sitting in the middle of the street with your eyes closed on like in the middle of Boston, you have zero risk, right? So, and this is free. Right? That's just a little benefit for everybody else. All right, so greater proprioception skills leads to greater variance in skill movement. And then, so if we have a greater efficacy, then our confidence improves and usually injury decreases with a confidence improvement. All right, so going back to Darius, when coach asked him, "Are you ready?" "I think so." He's like, "Are you ready?" "I know so." Right? That's self-efficacy. He has confidence in what he's doing because he's doing his visual and kinesthetic imagery. That nice visual kinesthetic. All right, task performance. So if we have an increase in the corticospinal potential, then we have a great, better brain activity, which then improves skills. So right here, perform biomechanics, performing specific tasks. Our gymnast, the accuracy, our running gait, right? If we have better proprioception of that, then we're going to be better at the task. Now, I'm sure you're listening to me ramble on about a brain. You're listening to me talk about my friend Bennett here. Now, I'm about to tell you why I gave you so much information on my friend Bennett. I wanted you to remember who Bennett was, right? Even though he's a good friend of mine, I wanted you to know, I'm not just bragging about him, I want you to know and feel an emotional connection. If we have an emotional connection, then we have a greater memory for what we're doing. Okay, so if any of you are like, "Oh, I love puppies. He fosters puppies. It's so sweet. He lives in Baton Rouge. I live in Baton Rouge," right? Until I shouldn't even say, like, he went home to Baton Rouge when it flooded and helped rebuild houses. Like, we love Bennett. I have an emotional connection, right? So maybe if you're doing this, do it with somebody they like. Do it with them, video themselves, video their sibling, their best friend, somebody they like, so that they're actually paying attention to the movement and not just seeing some stranger across the screen. So this is, I love the acronym here. So you could call it the PETLEP, or you could call it the PETTLEP, right? Whatever you want to call this. They tried really, really hard at making all of this make sense. But when you're building a model, you want to incorporate the physical, environmental, task, timing, learning, and emotional. All right, so we're going to go into a little bit more detail about all that. But I should say, if you have all of these, you're doing too much. You don't want to hit home all of these things. That is information overload. So we want to, and you want to use what the patient responds to. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But make sure you pick things that the patient engages with, and you want to pick things that the patient recognizes. Okay, your physical. You want to put yourself in the same situation as the imagined task. Maybe if you're trying to improve your free throw percentage, you're standing on the free throw line. If you're trying to increase range of motion, you can be on that treatment table, right? If you just think of it this way, it also, if you want to improve your golf swing, you can go to the driving range and mentally practice a lot, and it's free. No one's going to charge you. All right. So try to, as best you can, put yourself in the physical environment. It doesn't really, you're going to have a little bit harder time getting an athlete if you're a coach and they want to improve your breakaway stopping ability as a goalkeeper. Right, you're going to have a harder time being like, "Coach, can we grab the field?" Right, we're going to go out and just like work on this. Right, if you're at a high school and everything's being used all the time. So do your best to put them in that physical environment, in that physical space. Environment. I combined the two. Look at that. Task. So my bad. I combined those first two. Task is the content of the imagery should be appropriate to the skill level and preference of the individual. We go back to that gymnast. I'm not going to do a backflip. Right? I don't know the sensation of being upside down and landing. right? So I'm not going to use that. What I do know is I know how to squat, right? So maybe that's where we start. Okay, I know how to dorsiflex my ankle, so maybe that's where we start in range of motion. Okay, what are familiar tasks for them? Walking. Maybe you're just focusing on a heel strike and walking, right? Maybe you're focusing on that toe off or the swing of gait. Okay, break things down for them, right? Find out what they need and devote the tasks to them. Timing. So it should be similar to the actual time of the skill. There are benefits of slowing down a skill, so keep that in mind. Now, so I can't say like, hey, let's work on our crossover ability as a basketball player, right? So task performance. Because if I slow that down for them, it's going to be like, okay, load into your right hip, bounce the ball into your right hand, okay, extend your right hand out, and now dodge back over the other side, right? So it's really hard to say like, let's go. And if they watch that through a visual perspective, they may not see everything they need. So it is important to slow it down, but you don't want to go over the top. And then you want to build it up to what their abilities show you. All right, that's timing. We're on learning. So consider the skill level. All right, of the individual. Note that long-term motor imagery protocols should be adapted. So just like your rehab, right? Just like your rehab, you say, all right, we're going to start working on a table. Then we're going to start you're working in a upright position. Then we're going to start on a standing position. Then we're going to have you walking. Then we're going to have you running. Just like that rehab program, that's how you should build out your motor imagery program. Okay. As we adapt, as we learn, as we improve, that program should be adapted as well. Emotion. This is Bennett. Okay. Try to make an emotional connection with the task. People like stories. If they like stories, they're going to pay attention. Stay relaxed through this. So if I know I am compressing my nervous system, I am like hyped up doing my motor imagery. Okay, we are top notch, ready to go. I'm super freaking psyched to do this. I'm probably not going to be very good at it because all of my blood just went straight to my skeletal muscle. Right, it is not sitting in my brain. Right, then I'm going based on a reactive ability when I want to build up that reaction ability. Right, so being in a relax turns off, promotes that parasympathetic drive, helps decrease the pressure on the sympathetic chain, right, going down our spine. And then from there, I can actually get better nerve impulses. And then perspective, perform a trial and ask them what they like, right? Autonomy goes a long way. So giving people the choice is really beneficial for anything you do. All right, this is how you know what they're good at. It's a pretty simple question. Or I should say pretty simple Likert scale because this is the questionnaire. But all right, so you're gonna ask them. 1 is like, you're awesome, I'm great at this. 5 is like, I know what you're saying, but I don't think of it, right? So that's me watching a gymnast doing a flip, right? I know what that is, but I can't actually think of the skill and the demands that go along with it. So anywhere in between. So maybe it's vivid, maybe it's dim, who knows? All right, so this questionnaire, you can, it's really tough to read. Did my best to put it on here, but watch somebody perform a task, look through your own eyes, perform a task, and then feel that task within your own body. Okay, so then this is that functional postural balance. So functional postural balance is physical activity, right? So walking, running, kicking a stone, right? Things that people know, right? None of these are something that are unfamiliar to an athletic population, right? So all we just do is say like, hey, you seem to really like kicking a stone. You seem to be really, really good at the kinesthetic imagery of that. Maybe you just stub your toe too many times kicking big rocks. I don't know. But it builds a conversation. It helps build out what's going to truly benefit that patient. So future research, there's not a whole lot of longevity studies. So when there's not longevity studies, we don't truly know when we're actually going to hit that neuroplasticity, right? And neuroplasticity, as you know, is what's going to make this a habit, okay? We want to know the difference between fine motor skills and gross motor skills. So I can imagine myself, one of the studies is like, all right, watch yourself. I'm lifting my finger. What is the functional equivalence of me lifting my finger and me going and running a 10K? I have no idea. But we have to know, we have to start somewhere in research that shows what part of the brain is firing. Are we getting that corticospinal tract to go? All right, so we do want to know how this is going to benefit a gross motor skill. Time needed to achieve neuroplasticity, right? And then more functional balance, which is all of this stuff. More functional balance for more clinical application, right? We're not in here doing labs. We're on the ground people, right? We need to know what's actually going to work with our clients. So the research kind of needs to catch up to a more functional approach, right? With the improvement of force plates, I think we can get there. Absolutely. We already know through the other imaging, MRI or TMS, that we are going to invoke potential. But we do need to know how this is clinically going to benefit our patients. And what you guys need to know for this is free. Don't do it in a busy AT room. Okay, I promise you it's not going to work. So take my faults and figure that out, okay? If you've ever worked in a collegiate or high school or middle school setting, it's not going to work. Maybe if you're working in a PT place, you can find somewhere that's nice and quiet. Awesome. You guys got it lucky, right? But otherwise, they're not going to focus on you. I promise. The 18 to 22-year-olds don't like to listen to your voice for that long, and they're not going to focus for that long because they have too many other things going on. So that is one downfall of it, but there's no risk. I urge you to try it with your postdoc people, right? Maybe it gives them something to do, right? If they feel helpless, then you can help them build confidence, help them build up that neural network to relearn those patterns. Okay, maybe it's like, let's get that VMA going. All right. So they're just doing quad sets mentally. All right, our athletes should be able to do a quad set. And if they haven't, make them do it on their other leg and then have them do it on their injured leg, right? We do have crossover in strength when on one side versus the other. So use that to your advantage. All right. So thank you so much for your time today. Do you have any questions?
So going back to what you're saying about increasing, is there more research needs to be done on increasing the tolerance of neuroplasticity? I have a question about the actual language that you're using while you're doing the kinesthetic thing.
Yep.
And that I would guess that it would be more beneficial, tell me if that's true, to use metaphor or appropriate language for the client, obviously, but metaphor specifically to condense that language into a training moment.
Okay, so I just want to repeat it back so I know what you're saying. We'll work together here. So you want to know changing language to, or using metaphors so that it's something they understand?
I want to crystallize that efficiency.
Okay.
So getting it down to its smallest trainable components.
Mm-hmm.
So if language is something you can condense, I would assume that would make the whole process more efficient.
Absolutely. Yes. So maybe when you're talking about a heel strike, maybe you just mention the heel strike. You don't mention the ankle stabilizers that go with it. That will help you condense that into one easy, short burst of language versus a longer one, because it's something they're familiar with.
If the patient is doing that for themselves, should we provide them language, or should we just let them come up with it?
Kinesthetic?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe you can work with them. Absolutely. But they're not always, a general population isn't always going to know the breakdown of the movement. So working with them, if it's a skill that might be unfamiliar with you, then that will help get the best outcome. But because you're using two different languages, right? You're using an anatomical language, and then you're using maybe a athletic language. Okay, so marrying those two is definitely going to be more beneficial for something they understand. It all goes back to them. It's all about them.
Right.
So are you talking them through as they're doing the activity, or are you having them visualize it and then perform the activity, or is it a combination of both, or? I'm just a little confused on the timing.
Yeah. So it's something they're familiar with. So that's something they have done before.
Mhm.
And maybe you take them through it so that they remember it, right? Just like I had you guys do a bicep curl, just so you remembered the sensation. Okay, then you have them sit there quietly, and then they're going to use a visual or kinesthetic or visual-kinesthetic. Okay, and then you want to do that for reps. Like anything, practice, practice, practice. Right? And that's where longevity studies don't really exist. So it's like, hey, we did this 4 times a week for 20 sets at a time, and then we did it for 3 weeks, and this is what my outcome was. But what happens if we look at this longer? So you do want something they're familiar with. If there needs some reminding, take them through the task. Not long. I think I did it twice a week for 3 weeks. And they met took 30 minutes of their time each session. So I had a group doing visual, a group doing kinesthetic, a group doing visual kinesthetic, and then just a control group. I saw the beginning, saw the end. One thing to note, all the studies that have measured a physical group they're not doing motor imagery, right? They added that, then they added a group doing the physical task plus motor imagery, then they had just the motor imagery. That group doing the combination of both was always better. So that way they're practicing it, they're feeling it, and then they're still practicing. Okay, it's just like anything you do, right? It's going through this presentation, I went through it a million times, right? I only said it maybe twice. So it's important for anything we do is to get that neurological rep. Any other questions? Fire away.
Do you know, so you said that stories are useful for gaining attention, specifically thinking about high school students. Are there other strategies that are research to capture attention?
If you look into the sports psych world, that's kind of where I would go. I didn't focus too much on that. So my research did touch on like the emotional component and getting things to fire because there's an increase of blood flow. But I can help you look through that sports psych stuff because the sports psych guy I work with he loves it because he's like, hey, what I've been saying is working, awesome. It's like, hey, let's build out something a little bit better. So that's always nice, but that's definitely a sports psych question. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time.